Just have. Okay, the time is now 6:01, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. The board members are participating via Zoom meeting. I'd like to welcome those who are participating via Zoom and those watching the board meeting via live streaming. The link to the meeting is on the district webpage under Board of Education. The streaming will run through the end of the meeting when the board is on break or in closed executive session. The screen will fade to black and the sound will be muted. In the event there is a disruption in the audio portion, I will pause the meeting until it is reestablished. We have Mr. Vickers participating via Zoom. Mr. Vickers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I have Mr. Frank Otero participating via Zoom. Mr. Frank Otero, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I have Mr. Stephen Otero participating via Zoom. Mr. Otero, can you hear me?
I can.
I have Mr. Eloy Hidon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I have Mr. Gibson. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Gibson, would you please announce the meeting?
I will, Mr. Smith. This meeting has been announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Resolution and is a legally constituted meeting of the Los Lunas Schools Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Frank Otero, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mr. Gibson, are there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
There are none.
With that being said, I would stand for a motion on the agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hidon?
on number 9, under closed executive session. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
I would like, on the second line, it says closed executive session, limited personnel matters, specifically to review and discuss the continued leave status of the superintendent or her ability to return to work, in which an individual personnel, and I would like to strike, and medical documentation will be discussed. I would like to strike that, and I would like to continue the rest, strike, and medical documentation will be discussed, and that will be in the form of a motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Eloy Hidon on item number 9, closed executive session, for the wording to be limited personnel matters, specifically to review and discuss the continued leave status of the superintendent or her ability to return to work, in which individual personal documentation will be discussed. If available, discuss the leave and employment status of the superintendent pursuant to section 10-15-1H2 of the Open Meetings Act. I will stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Otero, excuse me. I got on a roll there. Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. Apologies. Let me scroll all the way back up to the top. Okay, that brings us to item number 5, approval of the consent items. I will stand for a motion regarding the consent items.
Mr. President,
Mr. Frank Otero.
I move that we consent the entire consent sheet as presented tonight with the following exceptions. Item number 8E, approval of general contract, approval of recommendation of award of RFP number 2020-007HR for professional tree trimming, pruning and removal services. Item number 8F, approval of construction contracts. Number 1, the approval of construction project to CES, care of Two Bears Constructions LLC for PFA 2018-2019 Security Awards Project for Secure Vestibules, SR offices at DVE, KGE, RGE, TE, and VE. That would be coming out of 31100 bond. And the last item to not be consented is item number 8F2, the approval of construction project to CES, care of Scott's Fencing for PSFA 2018-2019 Security Award Project.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. I have a motion by Mr. Frank Otero to approve the consent items with the exception of item number 8E, approval of general contract, approval of recommendations to award RFP number 2020-007HR for professional tree trimming, pruning, and removal services. Item number 8F1, approval of construction project to CES, care of Two Bears Construction LLC for PSFA 2018-19 Security Awards, project for secure vestibules, SRO offices at DVE, KGE, RGE, Tomei, and Valencia Elementary, 31100 bond money. Item 8F2, approval of construction project to CES, care of Scott's Fencing for PSFA 2018-19 Security Awards project. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hiron, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. For the benefit of the audience, all agenda items have been reviewed by the board members individually. Consent items are the action items on the agenda presented by the superintendent and staff for approval. If no discussion has been asked regarding these items by any of the board members, the items may be submitted for approval with one motion and one vote. That will bring us to item number 7, report on the close of the 2019-2020 school year. Mr. Gibson, I will turn this over to you.
Mr. Smith, did you want to do number 6, approval of minutes?
I believe we presented that.
Oh, that was consented, okay. Sorry about that.
Let me make sure you could be
No,
correct.
it was, you're right.
It was
You're right. I just turned the page and it was sitting right there.
Okay,
So,
we will be item number 7, close of 2019-20 school year. Mr. Gibson.
I wanted to briefly report to you on the close of this school year. It is a truly unusual school year. How do you close a school year where most everything has been done on Zoom, and students haven't been in school, and to a large degree, teachers haven't been in school. But we have had things going on, of course. First of all, I've been very impressed with the way principals have closed their school. There is, of course, the responsibility of collecting things that students have outstanding, primarily iPads and MacBook Airs, returning items to students that were left in desks or lockers, and then, again, celebrating the end of the school year, a difficult thing to do remotely. I have visited a number of the schools where the principals and members of the staff have been in the outside of the school, social distancing, wearing masks, delivering things to kids that they left in the school, collecting iPads and computers, and just generally saying goodbye to the kids. I've been very impressed with the relationship, the culture of doing that. Kids and their families have been very appreciative of the work of the schools and closing out the school year. I was at Los Lunas High School and Valencia High School, and today I was at Sundance Elementary School. Given the fact that everything is being done remotely, it's just a really nice touch for principals and their staffs to say goodbye to kids, to make sure they had what they needed, to make sure we got back what we needed. It was very well done. Today we began 4 days of professional development. This was scheduled as part of the extended learning time program that Los Lunas has participated in for the last year. There is a very complete schedule, as complete as there can be, doing things remotely, training for teachers in the district, training in technology, training in our curriculum, and then as we move through the week, that training becomes more site-based with the principals responsible, and then the last day, opportunities for PLCs to meet, and teachers to get together for the last time and close out the school year. Again, given the questions about the opening of school next year, the cabinet and I have had a series of meetings. Some of them have been in response to the Secretary of Education asking us to make sure we look at all variables for next year. School may open remotely again, that's a distinct possibility. It may open with some combination of remote and on-site learning. It may open with not all of the kids being in the school. So we've begun discussions about that. We'll be coming to you with recommendations as the opening of school becomes clearer and we understand what the circumstances of it are. But given the unusual end of the school year, I think people in this district have done it well. I'm really been pleased with staff development that's been planned, with the work that's been done at the schools to make sure students have the materials they need to go home for the summer, and we have materials back that students had out on loan. So things have gone well, they've gone smoothly. A different kind of ending required a different kind of planning, but I can assure you that the school year is ending as smoothly as it can, given the fact that students weren't there and to a large degree teachers weren't there. So I want you to know that staff have stepped up and done the job well. So I will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Board members, any questions, comments?
I guess the last thing I would add, because it is a footnote to all of this, we continue to follow very closely the advice of the governor and the secretary about when we might be able to hold some form of a graduation ceremony. We continue to plan the reverse parade. If the governor lifted restrictions to a point where we could do it, we are ready to step in and begin a graduation ceremony at all three high schools. But given the fact that we still don't have any clearance on that, we're in a holding pattern.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Board members?
I have a comment. It's not really directed to the closeout of the school, but I received a text from a teacher today and said to please know that Mr. Gibson's doing a great job. Let me see, doing an excellent job in planning for our students' returns. So I guess there's some positive stuff up there, Mr. Gibson.
Thanks,
So
appreciate that.
that was sent to me earlier today, and I guess you had some kind of a conference meeting, or somebody had a conference meeting for curriculum, and
Yeah, we've continued to have meetings. We had one this morning with the cabinet and the curriculum staff. But yeah, we're looking at all the variables, and there's a bunch of them.
Good.
Any other comments? So, Mr. Gibson, I just have a couple. I guess eventually when we start getting closer to knowing what we're going to do for the start of next year, obviously there's going to be some meetings. I'm assuming that we're going to involve, a lot of the staff members and hopefully some of the community and parents' involvement when we start talking about this hybrid calendar, I guess, that we're going to have. I mean, who knows what it's going to look like? There's so many variables. And when you start talking about classrooms at a certain percentage of capacity, I think it's going to be a nightmare. I have no doubt in my mind that our district doesn't have the capability to figure that out, but it's got to be something really, really difficult. So it's going to be like a lot of conversations once we start getting closer to the beginning of school and they start easing restrictions as time progresses and this thing starts to, if it does, hopefully die down a little bit. Also, it is unfortunate with the graduation situation that we are right now, and I know they won't take any pride in this statement, but, to the seniors, at least your class is going to be in the history books. I meant from now on, 20 years down the road, they're going to talk about 2020, how this happened in around the country, and their graduation was put on hold by a pandemic through no fault of their own. And, we wish that we could do whatever it is they deserve for them, but eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to do something nice. Speaking about the completion of the year and the staff and everything, I know that it's equally important to the staff for the completion of the year. I mean, I know they take a lot of pride just as well as the students do. And I know it would have meant a lot to them to see their students progress from kindergarten or second grade to third grade or graduate. And I want to thank the staff for putting up with this year that was unprecedented, unplanned, and I agree with all the comments that have been made, not only during this meeting, but the other meetings, that our staff has responded tremendously, and we have handled this, and we've educated the kids to the best of our ability, and I've heard nothing but the best. So I want to thank the staff ahead of time, everybody at central office, Mr. Gibson, you for your job you did, and everybody else. So those are the comments I have regarding the close of the year.
You can be sure, Mr. Smith, that we will have many discussions about the opening of school.
Yes, sir.
Once we get more specific information, there are just a whole mess of things to consider.
Okay. And also, I'll speak about something when we get to new business. That being said, I will move to any other comments? Sorry, board members, I rattled on there.
President?
Mr. Edon?
Yes.
Okay.
You said something there that got my attention, and that's for the seniors right now. All these seniors were cheated from the middle of March till now. They didn't get to finish off their senior year. But one of those seniors, or a couple of those seniors from Osunas High School, or Valencia High School, or Century High School, will probably be sitting in one of our seats. And 30 years from now, they'll look back and say, you know what? This is what we were dealt. They shut everything down, but you know what? The best of my knowledge, everybody made it safe, and that's important to me. So we're still safe, and let's continue being safe. I'm also going to have something under the new business under the COVID, Mr. Gibson, but I'll address it then. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Edon. Board members? All right, I'll move forward to item number 8E. The approval of general contract, approval of recommendation for award of RFP number 2020-007 HR for professional tree trimming, pruning, and removal services. Board members?
Let me just give a little preface to this, Mr. Smith. We are coming to the end of an existing contract for trimming trees. We have trees around a number of our buildings that need to be trimmed on a regular basis. Occasionally, a tree needs to be removed. So the purchasing department put out an RFP for tree trimming beginning with July 1 of this upcoming year for a 3-year period of time with the potential for an extension of 1 year. It was generally, as we always do, advertised in the local newspapers and through all of the professional organizations that they might subscribe to. A committee evaluated them and made a recommendation. I'm very comfortable that the process was followed well. So we are recommending the tree trimming contract be awarded for the upcoming year and the 3 years beyond that.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Board members?
So Frank, since you tabled this, I didn't know if you had something to say, or I can chime in. Not tabled it, but since you asked it to be an open discussion. Am I jumping the gun, Frank?
No, I didn't ask for it. I consented it.
To the trees?
You put the deed. I consented it.
Okay. My discussion was how many bidders did we get on this, Mr. Gibson?
There were 2 companies that were finalists that met the criteria for the bid. They returned it that actually met the criteria.
And is this bid acquired by hourly rate? How is this going to be?
Yes, it's an hourly
billed?
rate.
So it's an hourly rate. What else is included in it in reference to? Do they have disposal fees? Do they have what was included in the bid form?
Everything is included. So the criteria were the experience of the company in doing this kind of work, their technical approach for trimming trees, removing trees, and getting the material off-site, and then references from previous work that they'd done.
And is this company local? Meaning from within our county?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I know where the company's from, but I think I would be getting beyond what I can tell you about this bid.
Okay, it's my understanding they're local. I just wanted to see it for the record. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's good, and this gentleman that's doing this bidding has been doing it for quite some time, and he's done a great job for years and years and years. So I think this is a good deal. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve this contract.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item number 8E, approval of recommendation for award of RFP number 2020-07-HR for professional tree trimming, pruning, and removal services. Stand for a second.
Second.
I'll second that. I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Mr. Smith,
Mr.
discussion.
Stephen Otero.
I have one thing that I didn't ask in there, and I think this would come out in the discussion, right? Just a question to Mr. Gibson. It has nothing, no bearing on this, in reference to the vote. So, is professional tree trimming, is that the name of the business, Mr. Gibson?
I can't tell you the name of the business, but no, that's not the name of the business.
Oh, it's not? So my question is this then. How come we didn't list the business name here, but yet we list the business name for the next two items that are coming before us? That's just a question.
Yeah, the next two actually came through CES. So,
Okay.
yeah, this was our own bid.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no, thank you, Mr. Otero. I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item 8E, approval of recommendation for professional tree trimming, pruning, and removal services. I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Giron, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That will bring us to item number 8F. Approval of construction project to CES care of Two Bears Construction LLC for PSFA 2018-19 Security Awards, project for secure vestibules, SRO offices at DBE, KGE, RGE, TE, and VE 31100 bond. Mr. Stephen Otero.
My question is for Mr. Gibson. Do we have construction documents, blueprints for this work that's going to be done?
I have an outline of the work. I have not seen the blueprints for the work. I'm sure they exist, but I haven't seen them. The documents that I have outline the scope of the work, give you a blow-by-blow description of the work as it's going to be done. I would assume that we can't go forward without blueprints, of course. So I would assume that we do, but I can't answer that question specifically.
And Two Bears Construction, I think they're a local company, aren't they? Or you don't know that as well?
I don't know. I know, let me just give you an overview of the process. We considered, and this is before I was here, actually bidding these ourselves. And we talked to architects. These are, in the scope of school construction work, pretty small projects. And these projects, we could not get an architect to give us a reasonable percentage of the cost of the project. So we went to the CES contract. CES bid these. They got 3 bids for each of the projects, and the recommended company, Two Bears, is the low bid on all of those. So this is a project that came about through PSCOC, trying to make sure that schools had better security. So secure vestibules and moving the offices of the SROs, the school resource officers, so they are closer to the front of the building where anybody might gain access. It is a PSCOC priority. They are paying 76 cents on the dollar for this work to be done. So that's kind of the background of it.
This one here says it's bond money.
It is. Our 24% is our bond money. The
Okay.
70% money is the state money.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm wrong. Two Bears is out of Albuquerque, but they are a CS contractor.
Yes.
So that's the only question I have in this one. I think he's muted.
He was.
Yeah.
All right. I will stand for a motion on item 8F1.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this contract, provided that proper permitting and plans are required, if required, to the state of New Mexico for this construction work.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item 8FI, construction project, Two Bears Construction, PSFA 2018-19 Security Awards, projects for secure vestibules, SRO offices at DVE, KGE, RGE, TE, and VE with 31,100 bond money, provided permits and plans are present as required by the state of New Mexico. Is that correct?
It is. Thank you.
I have that motion by Mr. Stephen Otero. I'll stand for a second.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, it's Karen. Could you repeat that one more time?
Oh, I'll give it the best effort I got. Okay.
I missed part of it.
So I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item 8F1, approval of construction project, Two Bears Construction, LLC for PSFA 2018-19 Security Awards project for secure vestibules, SRO offices at DVE, KGE, RGE, TE, and VE with 31,100 bond money, provided all permitting and plans were provided as required by the state of New Mexico. Are we good there?
That's it. That's the motion.
Ms. Wolf?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. I'll stand for a second.
Mr. President,
Mr.
I
Hidon?
will second it.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero and a second by Mr. Elo Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Mr. President, Mr.
Yes.
President,
Mr. Elo Hidon.
we have just one moment, I have one discussion item on this. I understand what Mr. Otero's asking for. If we could also figure a way how we can put it on our district website so these parents understand what they're receiving. I've received a lot of requests from Tomé Elementary and Valencia Elementary and Desert View on what kind of security we'll be providing them, fences and stuff like that. So if we could put that on our website so they're aware of it also. If there's some way we can do that.
Mr. Gibson will make sure that the school sites listed on this construction project are aware of what it entails.
Yeah, I think we could give a general overview of what it is.
Perfect. Is that good, Mr. Hidon? Oh.
Perfect.
Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Elo Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. That brings us to item 8F2, approval of construction project to CES care of Scott's Fencing for PSFA 2018-19 Security Awards project for security fencing at DVE, KGE, RGE, TE, and VE, 31,100 bond money. I'll stand for a motion or discussion. I'm sorry, Mr. Stephen Otero.
Discussion. I'd like to just discuss a little bit that was discussed during the Finance Committee meeting we had, and if I'm not relaying it as I remembered it, please correct me, Mr. Gibson and Mr. Hidon. Still, I have an ongoing issue with us providing work to contractors, vendors outside of our school district, which I know we have skilled, qualified contractors in our school district. I understand that time is important here, and this is where CES does benefit us as a district. But during our finance meeting, it was stated by Mr. Gibson that they didn't go through an architect or any kind of plans or detail for the bids because it would cost us too much. And then I went on and I asked Claire if CES provides measurements, architects, anything else, because we're going through CES. She informed me that no, CES does not provide plans or any kind of measurements for it. And then I asked, well, how do you get these, how do you determine the size of fence, where you're gonna go with it, and so on and so forth. Ms. Searmans had stated that the way they do it is that our construction manager for the district walks the project with the contractor. Then I said, well, couldn't we do that with our local guys? You know, I have an issue because I guess evidently we have a contractor that is doing work for Los Angeles schools, and he didn't bid it because he was told that they have to have a state contract. I have a problem with this because here again, I think that we need to support our local vendors, our local contractors, because they're the ones to support us. So that's my big issue on this thing, and I hope that our administration can start reaching out to our local vendors to provide the opportunity to bid this work. I think, and I know that, and I was asking, I called Karen earlier and asked when the next board meeting was, and she said it was June 16th. Personally, I'd like to see if we can give an opportunity, at least to our local fencing contractors here, provided they have the insurances and workman's comp and all this other stuff. I know they don't get no permits because you don't need a license for putting fences. But I would like to see us, if we could, it's just pretty much, I guess, I'm asking if it can be done, if we could at least explore the fact that maybe give these guys an opportunity to bid. And if they're high, well, so be it, then at least we give them that option. Rather than just go straight to CES automatically, when I think, even if we had the meeting in June, and let's say it was approved or changed in June, I think that there would be enough time for July and up to the middle of August to do this fencing. Another issue I have is that any given time that I've gone to any school site, visiting the school site on a Saturday or Sunday or late evening, I can access any school site because the fences are not, gates are not closed, but yet we're still putting more and more fences. I know that they secure the sites during school day, the weekday, but other times, pretty much anybody can get it anywhere on our school sites. So if we put fences, I think we should also look into securing our sites, utilizing the fencing that because we're spending a lot of money here. I mean, you're looking at, I think it was like close to $150,000 for all this fence work. So that's where I'm at with this. I mean, I would just like to have that courtesy to see if we can give it to our local vendors. If it can't be done, then it can't be done.
So let me just respond a little bit to what Mr. Otero is talking about. This bid it's not a package because there are two different companies doing it, but the security fencing is designed to complement the security entrances. The scope of it ranges from 831 linear feet at Valencia, which, as we all know, has a lot of fencing already, to 2,795 linear feet at Tomei. It also includes 20-foot double swing entrance gates, which of course can be locked. And in one case, it's a 34-foot wide rolling gate. So I would recommend you approve this. It's been designed, it's been bid out by CES. I think in the future, I've heard you loud and clear, Mr. Otero, that we need to do our own bidding and try to give access to local vendors. We don't have any kind of ability to give them a preference other than a couple of small preferences in the bidding law. But I see this project as two pieces that fit together, that will give us better security, keeping people off of our sites, and if they were to get on our sites, trying to isolate them from getting into the building. So the whole purpose of this from PSFA was to create more secure school sites. I would recommend.
And it also was brought to our attention, the finance, that PSFA is paying for a lot of this as well. So I guess the same percentage applies to this as it does those vestibules that we're paying like 24%, PSFA 76%.
That's
right?
correct. Yep.
Which is good. And I did ask Ms. Searmans also if it was a directive from PSFA to go through CES or not go through CES, and she in fact stated, no, it's not a directive, we can go out to bid ourselves. This is coming up every meeting. It's coming up every meeting that we're giving work out to people that aren't in our district. And I don't see anybody else really not appreciating the fact that we give our people an opportunity. I'm not saying give them the work. I'm not saying score it in any different way. I am just saying give them the opportunity to bid the work. I appreciate the hard work that's put into it. I'm sure it's done right. I'm not saying it's not. It's just my pet peeve is not giving our local people the opportunity to be a vendor.
Mr. President.
He's mute again.
Oh.
Sorry, I'll get it. Mr. Franco Otero.
Okay. Well, you know, where possible, I mean, we definitely want to support our local business people, our contractors. You know, we definitely want to do that. You know, and I worked in that situation where you sometimes have to make those tough calls. But in this particular case, I mean, they've thought it out, and that's who apparently they want to go with. You know, our bond money comes from property taxes, and the local people pay that directly from the property taxes. But you know, in this particular case, we're getting an appropriations from general obligation bonds that are sold, floated throughout the state, and so we, along with every other municipality or county or what have you in the state, are participating to the fund. And for us to say that we could only hire locals with that funding mechanism, I think would put us in a lot of trouble legally. I think that it'd be saying, okay, well, we'll take your money, but we're going to spend it how we want to, and I'm all up for spending it the right way and helping the right people. But here again, we'll look at that in a future project. I would just urge that there's not so much participation from board members, between board members and contractors, you know, because our job is to vote on things. And once we get involved with it, with the details of how much do you want to bid, or how much do you going to get, or once we start negotiating as board members, we're violating House Bill 212. So I just want to advise you of that. And you know, I'm in support of approving this particular item, and there are just some things that we need to comply with. Thank you.
Frank, I appreciate that. You made me think about something else here, and that's good point that you have there in reference to its general obligation bonds and stuff like that. That's approved state money from the state. So I never looked at it that way. So I'd appreciate that advice. And I'm by no means am I saying let's go with local. I'm just saying give the locals an opportunity to bid. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying let's do local and local only. I remember back in the days, you know, when we were doing a job when I was working there, we asked the general contractor, please try to utilize our local contractor provided they meet your budget, their insurances and all the qualifications of bonding and everything else. You know, we do have a lot of contractors here that don't have, we're finding that out, that don't have licenses, bonds or insurance, anything else.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate that. And you just, you opened a light for me, turned on a light for me on the money that's given to us from the state. But by no means do I want people to think that I want to go local only. I've never said that. I want them to just have the opportunity to bid it. That's all. They might be too high. They might not even want it. But let's make that effort from our purchasing to allow our locals to be involved. That's all I'm saying. So I appreciate you waking me up on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Otero.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vickers.
I just wanted to ask Mr. Gibson, could these local contractors apply to CES to be considered for contracts when CES, gets request?
Absolutely.
So it
Yes.
seems to me that the local contractors, they have the opportunity if they choose to take it and become a part of the system. And they may end up getting lots of contracts for various districts if they go ahead and give that a shot. So maybe somebody should mention that to them if they want to expand their work.
That's a good point there, Mr. Vickers, as well. It is, and I'm sure Mr. Gibson's aware of this, it is a task. It's an expensive task to bid, to be an approved vendor for CES. And they only have openings every now and then. So it's not like everybody can become a CES. Sometimes they close them out that nobody else can become a CES. They have enough contractors out there. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, they have every opportunity as anybody else to become a CES contractors. And some of our guys have become, local people have become CES contractors. But it is a task, a very expensive task, because it takes a lot of time, because it's line item bidding is what it is. So yeah, you're right. But let's do try to give the opportunity to those that can't go and afford that task of bidding. It's not hurting to just ask them to bid it as well. And they can use it against a CS bid. There's no reason why they can't. That's a good point as well. Thank you.
Any other comments? So I just have one and takeaway from both Mr. Otero's comments and Mr. Vickers' comments, and Mr. Gibson's input, that we should, in fact, when possible, work on getting local, when it's possible, when it's cost effective, when they have the ability to do it, when they're regulated to do it, licensed to do it, when the feasibility is there. And I agree with you on all aspects of this, and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can't go local, and then we'll have to take the other guys. But yeah, we need to work on seeing if we can increase that ability in the future. All great comments, all a good discussion. But with all that being said, if there's no more discussion, I will stand for a motion on item number 8F2.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve it. Item 8F2. I wanted to bring this just as a discussion. And it was good discussion. Frank and Mr. Vickers have excellent points. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve item 8F2 for fencing.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item number 8F2, Scott's Fencing for PSFA 2018-19 Security Awards Project for security fencing at DVE, KGE, RGE, Tomei Elementary, and Valencia Elementary, 3100 Bond. I will stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Thank you. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item number 8F2 is approved. I just noticed that I have a note from the captioner for me to slow down. And also, if you are not speaking, will you please mute your microphones?
Well, before you move on, thank you. We will get this project moving as quickly as possible and anticipate having it done before the opening of school. Of course, we don't know when that's going to be, but we'll try to get it done.
Good point. Thank you, Mr. Gibson. That will bring us to item number 9, closed executive session, limited personnel matters, specifically to review and discuss the continued leave status of the superintendent or her ability to return to work, in which individual personal documentation will be discussed, if available. Discuss the leave and employment status of the superintendent pursuant to section 10-15-1H2 of the Open Meetings Act. I would stand for a motion regarding item number 9.
I move, Mr. President, that we go in executive session.
I have a motion by Mr. Eloy Hidon that we go to executive session. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Mr.
Yes.
Smith,
Ms. Wolf?
sorry, give me I need the whole motion. When you're going to,
Okay.
I need the full one. Sorry.
I move we go into close executive session, limited personnel matters, specifically to review and discuss the continued leave status of the superintendent or her ability to return to work, in which the individual and personal documentation will be discussed if available. Discuss the leave and employment status of the superintendent pursuant to section 10-15-1H2 of the Open Meetings Act. And that's in form of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Giron. I will stand for a second again.
I will second it if I don't have to read it.
I have a second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes,
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes,
Mr. Eloy Giron, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
you're muted, Frank.
Sorry, yes.
I'm the only one that's allowed to do that, okay? And I vote yes too. The board is now in closed executive session at 6:47. Motion to go back in regular session? Am I
Mr.
muted?
President, I move that we go back into open session.
I have a motion by Mr. Eloy Hidon to go back in open session. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes?
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The board is back in regular session. The board went into closed executive session specifically to review and discuss the continued leave status of the superintendent or her ability to return to work, in which individual personal documentation will be discussed. If available, discuss the leave and employment status of the superintendent. Pursuant to section 10-15-1, H2 of the Open Meetings Act, no other items were discussed, nor was any action taken in closed executive session. That will bring us to item number 11, new business. Board members, new business is utilized to give a topic to be discussed in the future. Please do not discuss anything in detail as the item is not on the current agenda. I will ask for any items that you would like to be placed on a future agenda.
Mr. President?
That's all over the place. Mr. Vickers.
It seems to me that we are supposed to be sort of methodically going through the policies and doing readings at least annually to look at them and determine if there needs to be some revisions, and sort of working our way through the policy manual with 3 readings, etc. And I don't recall that we've done any in the first 5 months here.
So we will revisit on a future board, on the next board meeting. I'll put that down as an item that we will discuss where we are as far as board policies go and where we are to update them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers.
Mr. President, new business, is it opportunity to read a statement or?
No, we can do that at the end of the meeting.
Mr. President?
Mr. Hidon had some new business.
Yes. I have 3 items, and I don't know how you want to address this in 2 different meetings or 1 meeting, but the first one would be, I would like to have a workshop to address any outstanding open purchase orders for the remainder of this year that we have. The second would be our lessons learned from the COVID-19 school closure, and also a plan for next year if we're in the same predicament. I also want to address policies regarding financial limits that do not need board approval. So did you get those, Karen?
Actually, I did not. I was just going to ask you guys to repeat it and slow it down just a little bit for me.
Okay, the first one is going to be outstanding open purchase orders for the remainder of this year that we're obligated to. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm sorry, I'm ready.
Okay, the second one will be lessons learned from the COVID-19 school closure. And they plan for next year if we're under the same circumstances. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready. You can keep going. I just need you to slow down. I'm good.
I also want to address our policies regarding financial limits that do not need board approval. And I would like those in the workshop. I don't know if you want to do them all at once, Mr. Smith, or break them into a couple of other ones, or combine it with maybe the request from Mr. Vickers.
So it looks to me like we could have items number 1 and 3 possibly on the same work session to deal with how we receive information on financials. Does that sounds like something you're trying to say?
I just want to address it as a school board, address this policy. and, see if we need to tweak it at all.
Yes, sir. And then I think a really good one is the lessons learned from COVID-19 and our plan for next year, should we be involved in this. Any other suggestions for upcoming workshop or upcoming board meetings? Okay, I have one that I would like to see on an upcoming board meeting, perhaps the next one. I would like to find out the information that we have as far as the status of the mediation that was to take place between the Las Unas Schools District and the Las Unas Schools Parent Facebook page, I believe is what it's officially called. I know that there was a mediation that was scheduled. I don't know if that ever took place, but I would like that on a future agenda so we can find out where that is.
Mr. Smith,
Mrs. Wolf.
you became totally garbled about 30 seconds, about 3 words in there.
Everybody tells me that. So
I'm sorry.
that's fine. So I would like to have on the next agenda an update on where we are with the Las Unas Schools Parent Facebook page and Las Unas Schools mediation that was scheduled. I don't know whatever happened of that. I know that it didn't take place, but I would like to see where we are and perhaps schedule that so we can sit down and discuss and resolve this issue. So that would be the 5th item that I have. Board members, any further?
Mr. President, I'd like to see if there's a possibility that we can get a report on what is available to us, our students, in the vocational education area for those that aren't really going after some college. I want to see how we are with that and see if we can improve it or add to it. So that would be another work session I think that we should look into about where we are with the vocation, what vocational opportunities do we have at both high schools, and what improvements can we have to increase the vocational education.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. So I have item number 6 as the availability to students for vocational field/classes at both high schools, and that will be in a workshop so we can present what we have and what we would like to see in the future.
Correct.
Any others, board members? So if there's no other ones, I will get this input to Mr. Gibson and determine the best venue for your topic, and we will get them on an agenda as soon as we can. We have all 3 of the high schools. Okay, so I think I have them all written down. If not, Ms. Wolf will correct them for me, I'm sure. Okay, so that brings us to item number 12, the announcement of meetings. As allowed by the Open Meeting Act and District Open Meetings Resolution, on occasion a quorum of board members attend the same function, including those held at school sites at the district level, as well as sports functions, conferences, workshops, and trainings. Board members will refrain from discussing and/or acting on board issues in those settings. In addition, only official meetings are published, and if other meetings are scheduled, they will be announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to announce the following meetings. On June 9th, there's a finance meeting at 4 p.m. in the conference room or Zoom. And on June 16th, there's a regular board meeting in the boardroom or Zoom. The meeting locations are dependent on mandates from the governor. If need be, they will be held via Zoom. And that brings us to adjournment. But before we do this, Mr. Stephen Otero, you asked me to, if you could make a comment. I believe I did not put that where it was supposed to be. I believe that was after we came out of regular, closed executive session.
Yeah, it's just a statement that I'd like to read, that I feel it's important to our community. It's a little...
So this item is referring to item number
10.
10.
So if I may,
Mr. Otero.
and it's detailed, and I'm going to read it. It's not something that's coming off of mine, so it took some time to put this together. So due to the recent actions being circulated in our district, our community, and abroad, I feel it necessary to address concerns people might have in reference to transparency. On January 7th, 2020, I was sworn in as a board member of our district. After being sworn in, I made a statement that I will serve with transparency and consistency. I now want to expand on transparency. I was appointed to the Finance Committee. On our first finance meeting, we were tasked with approving several travel requests that included travel, course fees, room costs, and meals, which also included our board members. I was surprised, number one, by how expensive this was, as well as the number of staff that would be traveling. We asked our administration to please revisit these requests. Soon after our first finance meeting, I requested from Ms. Sanders if she could approve or provide me with a total cost of expenses in reference to the staff attending training and conferences, again, which includes the board members. I was shocked as to the amount that was presented to me. The amount was $21,000 shy of $1 million. Yes, close to $1 million. This troubled me because it is my understanding some of our teachers are having to raise money for field trips. Another issue that troubled me was that most of our school nurses did not have ice readily available for injuries, but yet our administration office has a commercial ice dispenser. I am happy to say we now have ice makers for all our nurses. I will move on with yet another concern. Our district is paying between $125,000 and $150,000 per year for fertilizer for 47 acres, which is an outrageous amount for fertilizer. I have researched fertilization via the traditional method, with a total cost estimated at $22,000 for the product for the year, addressing the same acreage. Yes, we have nice fields, but let's give credit to our grounds maintenance crew as well. The fertilizer is just part of the equation. I would like to see our district look at other options on fertilization. We are hiring unlicensed contractors with no requirements of proper insurance to complete this work. Our district, in some cases, will seek to contract with vendors from outside of New Mexico. Today, we took action on approving a fencing bid in the amount of $148,492.69 to a contractor from Albuquerque. All this while we have a few fencing contractors within our district and Valencia County. A fencing contractor located in Bosque Farms is currently an approved vendor in our district and has completed smaller projects within our district. Again, I would encourage our staff to please include our local vendors in the process of seeking bids. We also have continuous expenses for purchasing snacks and drinks and breakfast burritos to top-level administrators for meetings. These are a few of my concerns I have on our budget. Our biggest concern as a board is and should be the well-being of our students. But it is also important that we respect and support our staff who come to put their hard work at educating our students. When you have a number of employees who have left our district, I'm talking about fantastic professional individuals, we should ask ourselves why. My interest is how we respect our principals, our educators, our support staff, and parents. More importantly, I am interested in looking into what our money is being spent on, how this money is being spent, and are we as a district following policy on this spending? As board members, we receive many concerns that are valid and concerning that have fallen through the cracks. It is valid that if one house is in order, then there's nothing to worry about. Clearly, we have some community member and staff that are very worried. If you are elected to a position and are willing to work together for the betterment of our students, then there is no need to start slinging mud. There is no need to go to a tactical mode that totally bypasses the need for focus on our students, especially now. There is nothing more important than to determine how best to educate our students come this August. As a member of the Finance Committee, I have become known as the person that has lots of questions. Some are answered and make sense, but yet many I am left without answers, with answers that are very puzzling. I think our district has a culture of intimidation of principals, teachers, and support staff. People have been silenced out of fear and has been mistaken for a district that is supposedly running smoothly. This needs to change. We all need to be held accountable and be able to answer to our community. There are checks and balances for a reason. Mr. Gibson has come in to help this district at a very crucial time. He has obviously been very collaborative, and we are very grateful. My personal objective is not to be a board member who sits silently on this board while these things continue. I want to celebrate our success and applaud those who come in, do their work, and treat others with respect. But we must also, as board members, do the work, and sometimes that means handling the good with the bad. Now, I am constantly being accused of trying to manage the day-to-day operations of our district. I say this is far from the truth. As a board member and a board member of the Finance Committee, or a member of the Finance Committee, I can only say that I am looking after the best interests of our students, our staff, and foremost, the finances is the driving force of our district. Therefore, I will continue moving forward, keeping a keen eye on all our expenditures. I thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me time to express my views.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. That was in reference to item number 10, which I skipped over, apologies. That leads us to the adjournment of the meeting. I'll stand for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to adjourn. I'll stand for a second.
Second?
The second by Mr. Dave Vickers. Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dave Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hiron, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Meeting is adjourned.